The ship hovered in the upper ionosphere, a sleek silver crescent cloaked in glimmering electromagnetic shields that shimmered against Earth's dense, moisture-heavy skies. From below, it was invisible, but to those inside, Earth looked like a blue-green orb of chaos and simplicity. Clouds churned over continents. Lightning sparked through thick tropical forests. Seas rolled with power no ship could tame. But to the Triac scientists, Earth was just another Class C planet. Nira Delvath stood at the wide observation dome of the ship's lower deck, eyes fixed on the swirling white clouds below. She was slender, tall, and graceful, with skin that shimmered in deep indigo hues, a trait of the Zalan species. Her silver research robe hung loosely over her shoulders, and thin strands of her lilac hair fluttered in the recycled air of the cruiser. Her hands, long-fingered and meticulous, were pressed lightly against the transparent shell of the viewing panel. "You always stare too long," said Vrelt, the Triac captain, stepping up beside her. He was taller, more imposing, his skin scaled like obsidian glass, with molten red eyes that glowed from beneath his helm. "This planet is not worth sentiment. Just a backwater orb with unstable biosystems and primitive life." "It's not sentiment," Nira replied coolly. "It's curiosity. The biodiversity here, it's like a living archive. Which is why we're collecting samples and not building monuments. You've got 6 hours before we shift orbit." Nira bowed her head slightly, acknowledging the order. Vrelt turned and left without another word. He preferred dominance over dialogue. In the research bay, the collection crew was busy sorting samples. Tubes of plant matter floated in nutrient gel, while crystalline vials held DNA markers of small mammals and birds. But the latest prize sat in a containment cube at the center of the lab, a fire beetle. Or so they called it. It was small. Maybe the size of Nira's thumb. Its exoskeleton shimmered like black obsidian, but with veins of red pulsing faintly beneath the surface. It didn't move. At least not yet. They assumed it was dead or dormant. "That thing came from near the equator," said Harn, a fellow biologist. "Picked it up just before we extracted the human." "Human?" "Yeah. Some wild scientist or something. He tried to stop the team from collecting samples. Got himself stunned and detained." Nira frowned. "Where is he now?" "Holding cell on deck 4. Nira didn't answer. Her eyes were already on the containment unit. She moved toward the cube slowly, observing the insect with a biologist's precision. The patterns on its shell weren't decorative, they followed heat distribution nodes. She tapped on the interface, pulling up bioscans. The readings were odd, low metabolic activity but a dense cluster of heat cells near the mandibles. She ran a second scan. Behind her, the lab door hissed open. "Thought you might come see me eventually," said a voice, unmistakably human. Nira turned. He stood between two guards, hands cuffed in front of him, his skin dusted with dirt and bruises. His hair was dark, cut short but wild from whatever scuffle he'd been dragged through. His eyes were a rich, stormy gray. Curious. Tired. Angry. "You're the one from the forest," Nira said. "Jace Rowan. I'm a field ecologist. Or I was, until your people decided Earth was a free-for-all. You interfered with a sanctioned collection. You collected a fire beetle," he said flatly. "You don't know what you have. We know it's an insect. We know it has unusual thermal capabilities. We're not primitives." Jace looked at the cube. The beetle twitched. "You should let me help." Nira arched a brow. "Help? That thing doesn't operate alone. It's not a solitary organism. It's a scout. If it's awake, the hive will wake too. There is no hive. Not yet. But you've brought one of their children off-world. That was a mistake. The warning came too late." An hour later, while Nira reviewed thermal scans in her office, the emergency klaxon screamed through the corridor. She stood immediately, blue eyes wide. Containment breach. Deck 4 lab. All staff evacuate. Neera sprinted through the corridors, dodging panicked crew. Smoke trailed from the doors of the lab. She keyed her wrist scanner. Inside, chaos. Tables overturned. Walls scorched. And at the center, the cube was melted from within. Liquid metal dripped onto the floor, hissing. The fire beetle was gone. "Where is it?" someone shouted. A technician cried, pointing to the ceiling. It was crawling across the light fixtures, mandibles glowing red-hot. Guards stormed in, their stun spears charged. One aimed. Target locked. He fired. A net of energy flared out, wrapping around the bug, but it didn't collapse. It paused. Clicked. Then the net began to sizzle. Burn. Then, it exploded. The room plunged into darkness. Smoke swirled. Emergency lights blinked red. In the haze, the beetle dropped down. Landed on a guard's shoulder. Bit. Scream. His armor hissed, melting where it had touched. Fall back. Fall back. Jace appeared in the doorway, his wrists now unshackled. He looked around, eyes narrowing. Neera turned toward him. "You were right. Too late for that," he muttered. "If we don't shut it down, it'll send a signal back to Earth. It can't communicate." Jace looked at her. "Wanna bet?" They found the beetle again in the power conduit corridor. This time, it wasn't just crawling. It had stopped. It pulsed. Once. Twice. And then a frequency broadcasted on a subthermal channel, picked up only by advanced deep-scan monitors. "It's signaling," Neera whispered. Jace nodded. "It's calling for help." They stood together in the corridor, the hum of the ship growing erratic. Neera swallowed hard. "Then we don't just have a containment problem." Jace looked at her, meeting her eyes with steady resolve. "No," he said. "We have an incoming swarm." The corridor outside the power conduits shimmered with faint ripples of heat. The alarms had stopped, but only because the internal systems had failed to keep up with the sudden energy fluctuations. Somewhere in the vents above them, the fire beetle crawled, unseen but not unfelt. Every few minutes, lights flickered or dimmed. The creature was moving with intent, following cables, searching for warmth and power. "We need to isolate this section," Neera said. Her voice was calm, but her fingers trembled over the interface pad she clutched in one hand. Jace stood beside her, leaning against the bulkhead. His shirt was torn, one sleeve singed. Sweat streaked down his neck. "Your people still think it's just a bug. They know it's not ordinary," she said. "But I don't think even Vrelt believes it's a threat. Then they're about to get educated." Neera sent a quick override through the panel. Section D9 is cut off. Power rerouted. Cooling units enabled. "Not enough," Jace said. He pointed to a spot on the schematic. "It's not just looking for warmth. It's looking for energy to send its message further. It's not calling to the nest anymore. It's telling them where to come." Neera looked at him. Her eyes, which shimmered with iridescent tones, softened. "Why would it pick you to talk to?" He smirked. "I never said it picked me. I said I recognized the behavior. I studied them before your crew started scooping them up like pebbles. Then help me stop it." A sudden pop of sound, a surge, rushed through the corridor. The lights snapped off for a second, then came back at half brightness. The ship groaned. They ran. In the auxiliary lab, a new containment field had been set up. Vrelt stood inside, his armor gleaming, flanked by 4 armed guards. A holomap displayed 3 red dots blinking rapidly on the screen. "Explain," he barked. A technician stammered. "The the beetle has moved across 5 sectors in 10 minutes. It's adapting. Heat trails suggest it doubled its energy output. Vrelt narrowed his eyes. So it feeds on our systems. Like a parasite. Jace entered the room, ignoring the guards that raised their weapons at his approach. It's not a parasite, he said. It's a soldier. You should be in the brig. You should be listening. That thing is part of a hive intelligence. A scout. You brought it into your ship and gave it the equivalent of a throne. And now it's calling the rest. Vrelt turned to Nira. Why is this human not restrained? Because he's the only one who understands what we're facing. You trust him? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Jace glanced at her, surprised. Then he nodded back. How do we kill it? Vrelt demanded. Jace didn't answer at first. He approached the map, watched the signals pulse. You don't. Not like you think. You can't kill what's already adapted beyond your weapons. But you can slow it. Confuse it. How? You have a signal jammer. You're a triac cruiser, don't pretend you don't have stealth tools. The technician nodded. We can deploy signal disruption pulses through the lower decks. Then do it. And route every energy drain through the cryo vents. Starve it. Make it feel cold. It hates cold. Vrelt waved to the guards. Make it happen. The techs moved. The next hour passed in a blur. Jace and Nira worked together in the system's core, rerouting energy, rerolling failsafe protocols. She admired how he moved, not with brute confidence like Vrelt, but with a quiet urgency. There was something magnetic about it. He didn't gloat. He didn't blame. He focused. You studied these insects for how long? She asked during a pause. 5 years. I tracked their migration, their metamorphosis, their energy cycles. Fire beetles are older than most human myths. And no one believed you. He gave a dry laugh. A few did. But it's hard to convince anyone a bug can melt tanks. Until it does. Nira looked down. You were right. He looked at her. You believed me. That matters. The moment hung there. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but there was a weight to it. A link forged in heat and urgency. Then the lights blinked again. Too late. The fire beetle had reached the fusion bay. Security footage showed it crawling across coolant pipes, its body glowing like molten coal. It pulsed 3 times, red, then orange, then deep crimson. The lights around the bay flickered, then burst. A plasma conduit cracked. And then, silence. System crash in fusion core, came a voice over the intercom. We've lost Deck 12. Radiation spikes incoming. Jace turned. It knows. It's not just feeding. It's learning. Nira's voice shook. It's evolving inside our ship. The ship tilted slightly. Gravity stabilizers strained. Emergency clamps kicked in. Vrelt stormed into the control room. We need to jettison the lower decks. We can't. Nira snapped. Crew are still down there. Collateral. This isn't a negotiation. Jace stepped between them. There's another way. Let me lead it into a trap. You're not bait. I'm not suggesting sacrifice. I can draw it using a heat lure. If I can get it back to the lab, we can blast it into vacuum. Vrelt considered. And if it kills you before then? Then at least I tried. Nira stepped forward. You won't go alone. I'm coming with you. Jace looked at her, startled. Then, softly, are you sure? She nodded. Yes. The heat lure was a small orb, about the size of a grapefruit, but packed with unstable energy signatures mimicking a damaged core. They set it into a hover drone and launched it toward the fusion bay. Jace and Nira followed, suited in thin mesh armor with cooling nodes sewn inside. Their breath echoed in their visors. The corridors were silent. Steamy. Lights pulsed irregularly. Then came the sound, clicking. Like glass tapping on metal. Then hissing. It crawled into view, its body now larger, its shell brighter. It had fed. Jace activated the orb. The beetle paused. It turned toward them. Then it charged. Go! Jace shouted. The drone zipped backward, down the corridor. The beetle followed, jaws glowing white-hot. They ran. Down past the medical bay. Past the cryochambers. To the airlock. Almost there. Nira cried. Jace turned to see the beetle leap forward, too fast. It hit him. Knocked him sideways. He hit the ground, wind knocked from his chest. The beetle climbed up his chest plate. Mandibles hissed inches from his throat. Then, a flash. Nira struck it with a stun rod. Sparks flew. The beetle staggered. Jace rolled. Grabbed the orb. Shoved it between the beetle's mandibles. Nira, now. She hit the airlock. The doors whooshed open. Wind roared. The beetle flew backward, orb still glowing. Then vacuum took them both. The doors sealed. Silence. Later, in the recovery chamber, Jace lay still, eyes half open. Nira sat beside him. You saved the ship, she said. He shook his head. We slowed it down. That's all. You almost died. So did you. Their hands brushed. Then held. What now? She asked. Now we hope that thing didn't finish its message. But deep in Earth's forest, 100 red eyes blinked open beneath the soil. The message had been received. Far below Earth's surface, where roots turned to stone and soil to ash, a pulse echoed through the tunnels of a forgotten forest. The creatures that stirred there were not shaped by Earth as it was, but by what it had become. Generations of war, radiation storms, and poison skies had given rise to a new breed of life, and at its core was the Queen. Her body pulsed like a slow heartbeat, her mandibles twitching with purpose. The message had arrived. It was faint, cracked by distance and space, but unmistakable. One of her children was calling. One of her scouts had been taken. And now, they would answer. The Triac cruiser limped in high orbit above Earth, its shields flickering with instability. Repairs were underway, but the crew's morale had plunged below crisis levels. Rumors whispered of internal sabotage. Of a message sent. Of something ancient responding. In the recovery wing, Jace sat propped up on a med bed, his chest still sore from the hit he'd taken. Nira sat beside him, scrolling through a stream of deep-scan telemetry. The data had shifted. These signatures, she said quietly, they're rising. Where? Beneath the Amazon basin. Thousands of heat signatures. They're moving. Jace exhaled slowly. Then it worked. The message got through. Vrelt stormed into the room. You said this was over. You promised containment. Jace didn't flinch. I said we slowed it. Not stopped it. Then stop pretending to be a scientist and start being useful. How many of them are down there? Nira answered. Unknown. But the pulse suggests a hive structure. Which means exponential scale. The more energy available, the faster they grow. Then we strike the source. We burn the forest. You'll only make them angrier, Jace said. You still don't get it. Fire doesn't kill them. It feeds them. Vrelt sneered. Then what do you suggest, Earthling? Wait until they climb into orbit and eat our ship. Nira stood. There might be another way. Deep in the cruiser's archive chamber, Nira pulled an old research file from the Zalan Planetary Library, a case study on ancient hive intelligences. Some species used pheromone chains. Others used subthermal waves. But the most advanced. They communicate through magnetic harmonics, she whispered. Even across planetary boundaries. Jace peered over her shoulder. You mean we can talk to them? If we find the right frequency. The forest swelled. From cracks in the soil, hundreds of fire beetles emerged. They crawled over roots, through moss, beneath rivers. They did not scream. They did not swarm. They moved like breath, unrelenting, silent, connected. In the heart of the hive, the queen moved. She had not stirred in years. Her wings unfolded like molten glass. Each step she took turned stone to slag. She walked slowly, deliberately. Toward the surface. Toward her child. On board the ship, Jace and Nira stood in the harmonics lab, a tangle of amplifiers, sensors, and synthetic resonance fields surrounding them. Nira tuned the emitter. This might not work, she said. Or it might work too well. Jace gave her a tired smile. Welcome to my entire academic career. They exchanged a brief look. Something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude. Fear. Something close to longing. Nira activated the pulse. A low, thrumming tone spread through the chamber. Almost imperceptible. Then the ship shook. Jace gripped the console. What was that? Something answered. She tuned the frequency. Outside, the forest responded. A line of beetles froze mid-crawl. Then they turned. Toward the nearest satellite. Toward the signal. From orbit, the ship watched as a pattern formed in the forest. The beetles weren't swarming randomly. They were forming shapes. Letters. In ancient Zalan. Nira gasped. They're using our language. What does it say? Vrelt demanded. She whispered, return. The child. Silence fell. Jace stood. Then that's what we do. We give the beetle back. You ejected it into space. Nira shook her head. Not all of it. I kept the mandibles. As samples. They might be enough. Vrelt looked unconvinced. You want to send alien DNA back into the heart of a swarm? What if it draws them to us? Jace said, they already know we're here. But showing respect might change what they do next. They prepped a drone. Sleek, fast, coated in neutral metals. Inside, a sealed containment unit held the remains of the beetle. Wrapped in cooled gel. The drone launched. They watched from orbit as it descended. As it approached the forest, the swarm parted. Beetles crawled aside, forming a wide path. The queen stepped forward. She lifted the drone with 2 claws. Studied it. Then opened her mandibles. A plume of golden vapor spread into the air. She turned away. And the swarm followed. Back on the ship, no one spoke for a long time. Then Nira said, I think we just passed a test. Jace nodded. Now let's make sure we don't fail the next one. The drone's descent had calmed the hive, for now. But peace, Jace knew, was a fragile thing. Especially when it came wrapped in melted steel and old blood. Aboard the Triac cruiser, lights flickered to full strength. Systems stabilized. But beneath the surface calm, a storm brewed. The hive hadn't forgotten. The queen hadn't forgiven. In the command chamber, Vrelt paced like a caged beast. His voice cut through the low hum of machinery. We returned their sample. We gave them respect. Why aren't they standing down? Because this was never about the one we took, Jace said. He stood beside Nira, watching fresh readings flow across the holodeck. Then what is it about? Balance, Nira answered. We violated their space. Broke the unspoken rule of intrusion without invitation. Now they're watching to see if we'll do it again. Jace pointed to the live satellite feed. It showed the forest. What had once been vibrant green was now blackened with fire beetle trails. Lines that moved. A path forming. They're coming north, he said. Toward the old human colony ruins. That's not coincidence. It's a message, Nira added. They want us to follow. Vrelt hissed. You want us to walk into a hive nest? I want to understand them, she said. Before someone else launches another orbital strike. 2 hours later, a small shuttle detached from the Triac cruiser. Inside were 3 figures, Jace, Nira, and a pilot named Keln, who had once flown extraction teams from acid storms on Volthrex. Keln was silent most of the way down. Jace sat beside Nira in the rear cabin. Neither said much until Earth's atmosphere wrapped around the ship. We might not come back from this, he said quietly. She looked at him. Do you regret coming? He shook his head. I regret not meeting you sooner. Nira turned to the window, her voice soft. We're strange allies, you and I. Or the only ones who saw what this really was. The shuttle hit turbulence. Then silence. Then trees. They landed. The ruins were half swallowed by nature. Vines over steel. Trees growing through windows. The forest had reclaimed the failed colony. But even here, the ground was warm. Beetles watched them. They didn't attack. They didn't flee. They stood in lines, like guardians. The trio moved slowly, cautiously. There, Nira said, pointing. The signal tower. It's still partly intact. That's where the original scout sent its message, Jace said. Then this is where the Queen will come. They waited. Evening fell. The ground began to tremble. Jace stood. She's here. Beetles emerged first. Hundreds. Thousands. They formed a circle around the ruin. A quiet perimeter. Then the Queen came. She was massive. 12 meters long. Her legs burned where they touched the ground. Her wings shimmered, each flap releasing a blast of heat that warped the air. She stopped within 10 paces. Jace stepped forward. The beetles clicked in unison. He held up his hands. We came to talk. Silence. Then, a single, low-frequency hum. Nira activated the harmonic translator. It buzzed, then formed words. Yes, Jace said. And we returned what we could. What will be? Jace looked at Nira. They want to see our history. That's not language. That's memory sharing. Then let them see. In a circle of fire beetles, they set down the ship's main recorder. Nira uploaded data, human history, environmental collapse, the wars, the regrets, the recoveries. She added Zalan records. Triac encounters. The beetle incident. Then they activated the projector. The forest lit up with ghost light. Images danced between the trees. Children coughing in ash. Oceans turned black. Earth cracking under bombs. Then came rebirth. Green returning. Seeds planted. Humans learning to listen again. And finally, the scout beetle. Its capture. Its resistance. Its call. When the story ended, the Queen moved. She stepped into the center. And hummed. The beetles began to change color. Their shells softened from red to gold. Jace stepped back, stunned. They understand. Nira touched his arm. They forgive. Hours passed in the ruins. The Queen remained silent, but the swarm dissipated slowly, like mist retreating with dawn. Only a handful remained by morning. Neera knelt by one. It approached her hand and gently placed its mandibles over her wrist. "They trust us now," she whispered. Jace looked around. "We came to make peace. And we might have done more than that." She stood, facing him. "There's something I need to say." He waited. She stepped closer. "I was taught that humans were reactive. Violent. But you. Don't say I'm different. I'm not. I was just paying attention." She smiled. "Then I'm grateful you did." They kissed. Above them, the Triac cruiser orbited quietly. Vrelt watched the feed in silence. Then he turned to his crew. "Prepare a message to the Council. Tell them Earth is protected." The sun broke through the clouds over the Amazon canopy, light streaming down in golden shafts that glimmered off the shells of the remaining fire beetles. They moved slowly now, calmly, like dancers in the last steps of a ritual. No longer red-hot with fury, their carapaces glowed with warm gold and pale amber. Neera stood beside Jace on the edge of the ruins, watching as the last of the beetles melted back into the forest. The queen lingered a moment longer, unmoving. Then she hummed again. "What does it mean?" Jace asked. Neera translated, though the vibration passed through her bones now more than her ears. "She means the test is over. She accepts the peace." Jace nodded. His voice was low. "We proved we could listen." They both turned as a wind swept through the trees. Not from weather, but from the sudden lift of shuttle engines. Keln had returned. Back aboard the Triac cruiser, the atmosphere had changed. Gone were the red alarms and sharp orders. In their place, quiet, wary deference. Vrelt stood at the center of the bridge when they returned, his gaze unreadable. "Well?" he asked. Neera stepped forward. "The Queen accepts our peace. The hive is standing down." Jace added, "And Earth won't retaliate. If we keep to the line." Vrelt looked at them for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Broadcast a general update. Effective immediately, Earth is off-limits to non-consensual biological collection. All missions are suspended." "You're issuing protection?" Neera asked. Vrelt grunted. "I'm issuing respect. That's what they asked for, right?" Jace smiled. "That's what they earned." A month later, the council chambers of the Triac Interstellar Accord sat full and electric. Delegates of 20 species listened as Neera gave her report. Jace stood quietly behind her. Not because he was silenced, but because she spoke so well. "The fire beetles of Earth," she said, "are not weapons. They are survivors. They are not monsters. They are guardians of their domain. We trespassed. They defended." One senator asked, "And now? What of them now?" "Now they sleep," Neera said. "Because they trust us to protect what they protect." Silence followed. Then applause. After the summit, Jace and Neera walked together beneath the stars of Arivon Station. The air smelled like ozone and orange blossoms. The station's artificial sky cast slow-shifting constellations. "You think it'll last?" he asked. "Peace?" "Yeah." She hesitated, then nodded. "If we remember why it started." "Which part? The beetle? Or you kissing me in front of 1,000 glowing eyes?" She laughed. "Both." They stopped beneath a growing tree, one of the new terraforming samples Earth had gifted the Council. A fire beetle, encased in amber-like stasis, glowed at its base. Not a trophy. A symbol. "They changed everything," Jace said. Neera leaned against him. "So did you." He looked at her. "So did we." They kissed again, not out of fear, or survival, or desperation. But because, this time, it was simply right. Back on Earth, the forest grew wilder and stronger. The queen slept beneath the earth, her pulse a slow rhythm deep in the crust. Her children moved quietly, living, watching, guarding. The balance had returned. Above the canopy, satellites drifted silently, not to extract or invade, but to observe. Because Earth didn't need weapons. It had guardians. It had peace. It had a covenant.